Hello and welcome to another edition of the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. This is a Takeaway Thursday version, and I am joined by two FSU legends, JP Peterson, who has his own talk show down in Tampa, Florida. I think it's actually broadcast anywhere you can have access to internet, so it's actually an international
global,
show.
Baby.
We are going international with JP today. And then the man, the myth, the legend himself, Charles Fishbein, is going to join us for a little Takeaway Thursday talk and some big recruiting talk on the back end of the show with Nick Carlisle, who will join us after JP jumps off. Just to give you guys a little bit of an explanation of how Takeaway Thursday is actually done on Tuesday. It's a column that I write for the Osceola. I'm not a big op-ed guy, but I do one during the season where I take my takeaways from the past Saturday's game, write them up on Tuesday, and it's meant to be reactionary and also forward-thinking. Because as college football fans and people that cover college football, our expectations and opinions and beliefs on our favorite football teams or the football teams that we cover change every 7 days, right? I mean, that's just the nature of a fan. So that is kind of what this show is about. We've never actually done this format before. We hope you enjoy it. And we brought some guys on this show that have strong opinions and are not afraid to share them. Not afraid to share them. This is this is supposed to be it's a fun show and it's a serious show at the same time. But I just kind of want to explain to our listeners and viewers kind of what Takeaway Thursday is, Takeaway Tuesday is, and what we're going to do is kind of walk our way through through Takeaway Tuesday, which will take us from Boston College into Memphis and beyond. So that's kind of where we're going with this. But guys, how's it going today?
Going well.
Oh, well, going much better now that we're a few days removed. And we got Buccaneers football here in Tampa coming up. So we got a little bit of a distraction this weekend where I don't have to think about Florida State football, thank God.
No, actually, Seminoles, in case you don't know, have the weekend off. There is no game for Florida State. They will not be back on the field until next Saturday against the Memphis Tigers. And I do have a practice update. I did not go to practice today, but the team was back on the field, and I think we had a full staff out there. I know Jerry, Kurt, and Bob are out there for sure.
Brock Glenn getting the first snaps.
A full padded practice, and we can't talk about depth chart issues. It's a promise we made with Mike. What I can tell you is it was big on fundamentals, and Hakeem Williams was back at practice, and according to the boys, looked pretty good. They did not see him with any drop passes in any of the drills that he went through, so that's good. But I think at this point,
who was throwing him the passes?
Pat, one question: Is the quarterback 6'4", or did he shrink to 6'2"?
I was not there.
Can we do?
Come on.
Listen, we're going to get
to the tan? Is he tan, or is he a little country? Like, what are we going to do here? We're gonna get it out of here.
Hey, we're going to get to the quarterback. Just down on the list.
Can he actually put 2
feet? Is the kid from California, or is he from freaking the East Coast, man?
Does he run or does he plod?
I know that he had 2 arms.
Does he have big feet or small feet?
That's all I know.
If it's 2 arms, it's got to be Brock, because I know who he doesn't. DJU doesn't have an arm.
Oh my Lord! Shots fired, and we're not even 5 minutes into the show. Hey, I promise you, I'm going to give you a chance to talk about the quarterback. That's what Bridge Over Troubled Waters the segment's about.
Oh my God!
All right. So
let's jump right in, Pat. Let's go.
Yeah,
let's go.
JP is mobile and hostile down there in Tampa. He's in his car trying to find where Baker Mayfield is, see how his arm looks before the Bucs.
Oh, it looks good. It looks really good.
Who the Bucs got?
This first week they got Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders.
Hey, how's Kalen DeLoach doing down there?
Not so good. He did not make the roster. So
I thought he did.
Practice squad.
Squad. So he's still down there. Good. Yeah. He's drawing an NFL paycheck. That's a pretty good thing.
Yeah, that's a good check too. It's not a bad
really
check.
Good check. All right, so
quick update. I did speak with him and his lovely parents, by the way, in training camp, and he's doing well. It's just a crowded locker room right now at the linebacker position. They like him a lot. He got injured during training camp, so he wasn't able to really. When you get injured during training camp as an undrafted free agent, it's a that's a hard deal. That's a really hard deal. So he wasn't really able to show his wares, so to speak, but they do like him a lot, and they're going to keep him around, no question.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, I know you seem to be a bigger fan of the Bucs linebacker room this year than you were last year, because you did not like the Bucs linebacker room at all last year, if I recall correctly, being on your show, waiting in the waiting room a couple times. All right, so let's go back to Florida State on the field in Tallahassee. All right, so my first subhead in this article was Irish Eyes. I said that FSU, I picked Boston College to win the game based off the film that Florida State put down on tape against Georgia Tech. There were some red flags to me. This team is now 0-2. Now you guys have 2 games that you have been able to watch. What are your eyes telling you about this football game? And JP, I'll start with our football team, and I'll start with you, JP.
Well, it's telling me I did make some money on Boston College, that's for sure. We told you to take the points. I did think they would win the game, but after 2 games, I don't know if they're going to win another game, because if all you got to do is turn around and hand off the football, and the defensive line is a non-factor, and the linebackers have no clue what they're doing, you're going to lose to just about everybody, because any competent team in college football can run the football. And I don't think I've ever seen a Seminole defense that was softer up front, even in the Taggart era, to be quite honest. It's a complete dumpster fire on both sides of the line of scrimmage, which is interesting, because we thought with all these returning starters on offense that would be a good offensive line. Pat, you told us it was all masked by Jordan Travis. You were right again. And we were told that this defensive line could be historic. Even by the way, I heard Nick Saban say it.
I thought the defensive line was going to be very good. I mean, it's what we saw in practice.
They play too high. They're just, and their technique is awful. Their reading skills are non-existent. Definitely Florida public school type. It's awful. It is. I've never seen a team so hyped, so bad. The quarterback is absolutely as inaccurate a quarterback as I've seen. He looks like a high school quarterback. Some of the easiest throws you could make. Of course, some of the receivers didn't help him a lot of the time. He can't run the football. He's absolutely got concrete shoes. There's no reason to keep him, and we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
You asked, is there? I couldn't find a single positive besides the 2 kickers. That's it. And the coach evidently has completely lost his mind. I mean, it just. I see nothing redeeming whatsoever about this football team, and just watching guys like that just don't want contact, man. That just don't want anything to do with it. That won't stick their face in the fan at all. And I'm like, if one player did that back in the Mickey Andrews days, he'd never see the field again, like ever. Like not the next play, not the next game. Like pack your bags, bro. You can't do that in a Seminole uniform. And these guys just stay on the field the whole game. It's unlike anything I've ever seen.
Yeah, I do think you have to get calloused up to contact, and I do think the only way to do that is to have contact in practice, and that's
without question.
Yeah, that means live football, and listen, they do 3 scrimmages a preseason, and that's pretty much the live football part for them. And listen, I don't know how you correct the physicality at this point, but we'll talk about that as we move on the road, because that's going to be part of Boston Common subhead. But it's just your balcony of this football team after.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing is, whether you've coached, any of you guys, including myself, whether you've coached at the rec level or you coach college, or some of you guys have been involved in that, you, Pat, is that the one thing that you control, and I tell every kid I've ever coached, is effort. That's something that God didn't give you. That's something that's in you, inherently is in you. And that's the biggest disappointment for me, is the effort from this team. They're not good from the effort standpoint. It looks like guys have cashed in their checks and don't want to be there. Listen, we've seen guys that aren't super talented that have played at Florida State, whether it was under Mickey, that these guys at least gave effort. that you knew when they went out there, they put that Florida State helmet on. I've always said that when you play at Florida State, you play at a Miami, you play at a Florida or any of these big time programs, when you put that helmet on, you represent that university, you represent everything. These guys have been an embarrassment the first 2 games, and that's on them. I don't know if the coaches are just not getting through to them or whatever it is, but that effort hasn't been there. And if they don't change that, the results on the field aren't going to change.
Yeah, listen, and I thought, Mike made a comment after practice today that they played harder against BC than Georgia Tech, and quite honestly, I was disappointed that that's what we're at, right? I mean, I thought we were past this.
I didn't see that.
I thought we were past this after the 2021 season where we didn't have to question effort anymore. Now, listen, and we can talk about this now if we want. The dynamics of a football team have changed with the NL and the transfer portal, right? So now you bring in 40 new faces, and as Shane Burnham, who came on our show the other night, said, when Fisk and Verse came in, his term was they vibrated. They created a vibration in the locker room, and everybody had to rise up to that level of vibration, and we'll follow them. So, lucky there. And Fish has taught it. The portal is sometimes you get a bumper crop out of the portal, and other falls you're going to meager harvest. If you look at what's going on through 2 games, players at Florida State has taken the portal this offseason, not produced, right? Coleman is Malik Benson, Keon Coleman, Roy Williams has not been, Trey Benson, so forth and so on, the whole thing, but I'm not going to do it. So I think that's part of cohesion, togetherness, and I think that's a fine line that coaches all over America, not just Mike Norvell, have to learn to walk. And
right.
I think some years it's going to work to your advantage. And I think some years it's not. And right now, as far as who they've brought in with the portal, since you guys brought it up, it's just you just have not brought in the same caliber of players you have in years past. Now, you've got a guy that's relatively young in Marvin Jones that may continue to develop. It's his first time playing a full season as a hand-in-the-ground defensive end. So you can't just throw everybody into the same bucket. But I do think that is part of this. And to your point, guys, and this was the Boston Common part of this article. My frustration or disappointment with this football team coming out of the Boston College game on both sides of the ball. And we said they were going to be good. We missed it, and we of course I think it's very important to notate that, and every organization that covered Florida State said the same thing about the offensive and defensive lines.
Right. Exactly.
But we don't get to. So they did what they said they did. They looked good in the drills we saw. So that's not a lot.
Right.
But what we don't get to see is get them tackle football. I'll quit repeating it. But here's where I got frustrated with, is particularly, actually both sides of the ball on the line, because there are some talented kids. We asked Shane yesterday, what kind of, the personnel. And he goes, there's very few teams from physical ability standpoint and athleticism that I would trade rosters with up front. To Fish's point, something's not. There's a disconnect somewhere between the coaching. But here's my issue, JP, and I know you guys feel the same way. There was a little more deception involved in the way Georgia Tech moved the ball up and down the field with formations and play action and motions and swapping tight ends over and all that. Now, there was some motion by Boston College, but ostensibly what they did was they got a bunch of condensed sets and said, I tell you what, we're going to run the ball between the A and the B gap all night because we don't think you can do it or stop it. And they couldn't. And they knew it was. I think that is the red flag coming out of this game is Boston College didn't try to spread the field out. They didn't try to use Thomas Castellano's athletic ability to beat Florida State. Now, they used him to finish off Florida State in the second half with some big key runs, but how
they held back,
yeah, you are just from the defensive standpoint. Fish, about the personnel. Are you surprised that not only did we not see improvement on the defensive front in this game, we might have seen them backslide a little bit? What is y'all?
I mean, all you got to do is look at the final play of the game. Marvin Jones ran up the field, like basically looked like a kid that had never played D end and allowed a 3rd and like the most important play of the game, just basically told you the story for the whole game, that this kid went up the field like recklessly, didn't even care, let the guy up the field, and you lost the game right then and there. And that basically showed you what was going on the whole night, that Marvin Jones, that one play just stands out to me. Like, these guys didn't get it at the beginning, they didn't get it in the middle, and they didn't get it at the end. Like, they did the same thing over and over. Murphy's Law, man. Keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
And everything you said, Pat, and Fish, exactly what you said. At this point, is it not coaching? Is it not? I mean, if you got a guy that's on the field making the same mistakes, play after play after play after play, you can't cover the back out of the backfield. You can't cover the back out of the back. You can't get over there. You don't even recognize it. You can't contain. You're not containing. Son, you're not containing. You didn't contain. Son, you got to contain. I mean, at what point do you pull the player off the field and put somebody else in?
Yep.
And at this point, 2 games in, that's all it's about. You want to talk about coaching, it's about personnel decisions now. Clearly, you guys aren't getting the message. You're not listening, or you can't do it mentally. That's all. We've seen 2 games. We got 125 snaps of this. Move on to the next guy. Yeah. And if he can't do it, move on to the next guy.
I mean,
there's talented players here.
I think you saw it with the one kid. I forget his name. Lyons. I thought Lyons flashed in that game and showed me enough to say, all right, this kid needs more snaps.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think Florida State should do is, I remember Christian Jones when Pruitt got there, he took Christian Jones and moved him to that rush end. I think Cam Riley is that guy. I think he's that guy that you can move him a little closer to the line of scrimmage, get him up the field, let him make plays in the run and pass game. I don't think he's terrible in space. I mean, I've watched him. He's gotten out of position, but at least he's trying. I think Cam Riley, watching the film, I thought he made plays. Peyton flashed when he wanted to. I think he's on and off. I thought Marvin Jones Jr. deserved to be benched. I just didn't think he played well at all. I don't care what his name is, and I was a big fan of his coming out of high school. This ain't high school anymore. You can't make those plays that he's making, because that breaks down the whole defense. If he's not freaking setting the edge and he's getting up the field and he's basically allowing that quarterback or running back to just basically whiz by him and he's doing nothing, how do you win? You just can't do that. And I think there's guys out there, they have talent, but I said it after this game, I think they got to open up all 22 spots going into the Memphis game, and no spot is guaranteed. I don't care if it's quarterback, running back, whoever's the best,
100%.
You're going to play.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, these guys, none of these guys that are getting paid or are starters have earned a freaking penny. None of them. Not one. I mean, I looked at the tape yesterday and I'm trying to find anything that, and Lyons does flash, but then he also gets absolutely destroyed at the point of attack sometimes. Maurice Smith is getting knocked. I mean, this dude's getting knocked 4 yards into the backfield on a basic running play. I mean, there's not a running play in the world you can draw up that's going to work in that situation. And that's, if you're a senior and you've been playing, I don't care how many starts you got under your belt, if that's continuing to happen, you can't play anymore. I can get a freshman to do that. You
can't have an entitled unit. I always go back, and I brought this up on the message board. You go back to the 2011 team. At that time, Jimbo and Trickett was like, all right, we've seen enough of these first-team offensive linemen. They went into the Notre Dame game. They played 5 freshmen, and those guys ended up being the reason they won a national title 2 years later.
Thank you.
They got to do the same thing. I'd put freaking Armella in there. I'd put Simmons in there. I'd put Otto in there. Listen, they can't be worse. I'm tired of hearing
they can't be worse.
They cannot be worse.
They can't be worse.
It's impossible.
It's absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
And you're building for the future. And that's the whole, at this point, if this season's going to mean anything, that's what you got to do. Start building for the future. And I don't care, we've had this discussion on my show, Pat, as well. I don't care how much you're making.
Yep.
I don't care what the NIL check says. If there's a sponsor or a booster or a general man, I don't give a crap who it is that says for 1 second, hey, we're paying the guy. I don't give a shit. He's gone. I mean, these guys have earned nothing.
I mean, JP,
and that should never be part of the equation.
JP, and I think you'll agree with this, and Pat will agree. They're no longer student athletes. These guys are paid professionals.
That's right.
And their feelings don't matter anymore. You got your
exactly.
If you're not delivering, give it to somebody that wants to be out there, that's going to try harder, and when they put that helmet on, represent that university. If they don't like it, get it. Enter the portal. Just jump in and do us a favor. Go back.
Well,
hey, not that I need to add fuel to y'all's fire right now, but I read an article today by The Athletic, and I don't know whether this is spread over 4 players, 8 players, 12 players, but they're apparently Florida State's got $2 million invested in its front 4. Oh, and I don't know if that's the 2 deep. I don't know if that's 3 deep. So but that is what The Athletic put out there today. So maybe we need to start holding. And listen, maybe they should go to the NFL model. It's got to be a game check, right? You got to play in the game.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That's without a ski mask and a gun, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I found that fascinating, and all it did was make me more frustrated. And then, go to the other side of the ball. Again, a unit that we thought was going to be the best offensive line we've seen in years at Florida State has been held to 119 yards on the ground in its first 2 games. That's 117th out of 133 college football programs. Listen, it's been pretty bad across the board. I thought Maurice played pretty good in the first game. He struggled a little bit. Some really uncharacteristic 2 penalties for false starts by the center. You don't normally see that at any level of football. Listen, too many missed blocks, particularly in pass protection, tackles getting beat inside on a regular basis. That is a no-no. I thought they would play better. Listen, Boston College, and what we do know is that nothing some teams translate more from one year to the next, but certainly Boston College, what they were last year, is not translated over to this year because they dominated Florida State's offensive line and they weren't doing anything very tricky. I've told you this. JP and I have talked about this. I think a lot of the struggles on offense and the offensive line, particularly, is the fact that Jordan Travis is not here, and and defenses do not have to account for that wild card and this offense.
It is.
And it has covered stumps of this over this offensive line last year, which they were. And listen, you're talking about they're struggling to the point now where even in 2021 when we went 5-7 and still didn't have a great offensive line, they still manufactured production in the run game, and I think that is solely now looking back in retrospect, because of that. Mike's offense was very good under Jordan Travis. They have struggled without Jordan. You can go back and look at the record with Jordan, the record without Jordan. They've dropped 2 more games. Obviously, the first 2 games this year without Jordan. There's no threat of a quarterback running attack besides 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, 3rd and 2, 4th and 2.
Right.
And
right.
I think that's where the issue is on the entire offense.
Well, you're making a bad offensive line work even harder. That was kind of what we saw with the Bucs last year. They had a bad offensive line, and they had a coordinator that just wanted to do, zone runs up the middle with guys with an interior line that can't move anybody, and it just makes things harder. And what you see now is, especially these defenses, they have, even when there's an RPO, there's no fear of the run because you could be a deep safety and still get the DJ before he gets to the line of scrimmage. There's just the quickness. There's no quickness there, so you don't have to account for him in any way. If he pulls the ball, it's okay. Somebody that's down on the ground 10 yards behind will still be able to get up and go get him. There's just nothing there. And then from an escape the rush standpoint, he's not going anywhere. I mean, he's just as slow moving as I've ever seen. And you guys know, as coaches, when you're preparing, you see this and you're like, okay, our DNs can do whatever they want. We don't have to have rush line. I think you can do whatever you want. And from a running standpoint, that extra man that you need for a running quarterback, and if it's a good running quarterback like Castellano, you kind of need 2 to account for the quarterback. And that just changes the equation. It's a numbers game, as you know. It changes the equation in terms of how you defend it. And it gives your offensive line, absolutely no room for error because you've got to put every hat on every hat, and you're still getting outnumbered because they're bringing their safeties up because there's no fear of the passing game. It is such a disaster right now. There are no answers.
Listen, I think nothing speaks to the issues they have on the offensive line more than 2 series in the first half, which I call Boston legal because I think it's an indictment on the offensive line.
Yes.
FSU has 2 series where they have first and goal to go they twice first and goal from the 5, and I think the other one was first and goal from the 6. And Mike calls 6 passing plays from the 5, and that's 6 passing plays over those 6 plays that were first or second or third and goal. 6 and 4 of those were from the 5 or 6 yard line. The message that sends to your team and to your offensive line to me is a little bit concerning. I've written about it. I've talked about it yesterday with our guys. What are y'all's thoughts on that decision, and how do you read into that?
Go ahead, Fish.
I think the problem is the elephant in the room is DJ. And I mean, you talk about Castellanos. Castellanos was recruited by Florida State. If you had put him in that offense the first 2 weeks, FSU's 2-0. I truly believe that. And, a good quarterback makes all line good, makes a running game good. These D coordinators have zero fear of DJ. All right. He can't run. He's not accurate. He can't and then basically teams are going to just play man coverage. They're not even going to worry about our receivers to get behind. So he basically limits everything, and it shrinks everything. You can't do anything with a running game when there's no threat of the quarterback. Look at Castellanos. You have to always account for him. You don't have to account for DJ. He is honestly, like I said, I feel bad because I think he's a good kid. He probably works hard, but he's just not a good quarterback. And I know we said we were going to talk about him, but
we are.
He's a major problem in the run game. And then the O-line, they got to it breaks down the entire offense when you have somebody that's so limited in what they can do.
Yeah, and listen, unfortunately, the issues just aren't on this in between the lines, or they're on the sidelines, particularly in this game. We've talked about the 6 pass plays in the goal line, and then listen, we all know Mike's going to go for it on 4th down a large number of times. He always claims the analytics, but you're down 14-6, your first series of the 3rd quarter with about 27 minutes on the clock. You get 4th and 5 on your -47. Your defense just got 3 and outs to end the previous half. You've got the best punter in the country on your team who has already pinned Boston College inside the 20 twice. Fourthly, it's a must-pass situation because you haven't been able to run the ball, and the must-pass situation makes it even you've had a quarterback that has missed open receivers and receivers that act like the ball was covered in grease, and you go for it. And not only do you go for it, you throw an interception. The ball is thrown. The nearest receiver for Florida State was in Duval County when that ball hit the Boston College's DB's hands, and he takes it back to the 7, turns it into a 21-6 game, and for the most part, it was out of reach after that. And listen, analytics told Mike to go for it. Awareness of the entire situation should have told him not to. I mean, listen, we get into Mark Salva and I get in disagreements about the 4th quarter stuff, or 4th and down stuff all the time. He says I'm going back and looking at it 2020 hindsight, whatever.
No, but the moment it happened, Pat, I was just incredulous. Everything that you said there went through my mind. I'm trying to think because I'm a go guy all the time. It's when you cross the 50, but he wasn't across the 50 yet. But everything that you just outlined, if you mark up 12 pros and cons, every one of those is in the con. Every single, there's not one pro, and that's like. So we've established that. All right. So so what does it tell you? This is a complete panic move. This tells me that Norvell is. I don't know what the hell's going on with him. Yeah. Something, and the whole coaching staff. The calls down on the goal line that you just mentioned, 1st and 5, first and goal from the 5. You got 4 runs because you're not kicking a field goal. If you can't do 4 runs and put that ball in the end zone, 4 tush pushes with a 260-pound quarterback. Are you effing kidding me? I mean, come on, run the freaking ball into the end zone. Then that call, the calls were just for an offensive genius. I don't know what the hell was going on with Mike Norvell. That is the most egregious fourth down call I think I've ever seen in the history of football. I mean, I can't think of a worse one. And that lost the game. One possession into this third quarter, you've lost the game. And a coach cannot do that to his players. I mean, I hate to exonerate the players in any way, but that was a grotesque call. Grotesque.
Listen,
Yes, Mark Farley agrees with me on a fourth down call. Thank you, Mark.
Listen, DJ's shown nothing in the first two games for you to ever go for it on fourth down unless it's like fourth and a yard, and he could, like you said, he just basically bowls for it. The problem is, I mean, this team, you talk about them, it's very frustrating because there's plays to be had. You saw with DJ in the end zone, he had the guy wide open, he overthrew him, and then even on the flea flicker, the one thing you know on a flea flicker is you're going deep. I mean, who the hell checks down to the tight? I mean, the kid was wide. 21 was wide. Like at that point, when the guy checks down on a flea flicker, you got to be like, all right, this he doesn't want to play. He doesn't want to make a big play. You know, he's hoping somebody else will make a play. It's just.
All right, well, we're gonna get the bridge over troubled water in a second. I promise. All right, so we saw something we do not see much in college football. In college football, winning the game is as much about the final score as it is getting the job done by itself. So BC takes over its last drive, ahead 28-13. Starts with the ball on their own 20-yard line and matriculates the ball all the way down to the FSU 4-yard line, where most college coaches, including Mike Norvell, would try to tack on another touchdown, or Greg Schiano against Howard, which was a little bit of a blow-up last week between him and Larry Scott. It could have been 35-13, or he could have taken a knee. I'm not sure which of those optics are worse, taking a knee and just saying, hey, we got you where we want you, we're done, or the optic of them making it 35-13. I kind of wish Bill had just gone ahead and put it in the end zone instead of taking his foot off the gas. And
you had the over. That's why you wanted him to put
me too. Me too. I had the over in the parlay. I had Washington College in the points and the over in the parlay. I'm pissed off. Like, what the hell? Hey, Bill O'Brien, this is college football. For God's sake. What the hell are you doing?
That's the only way you care that they pushed it in there.
Hey, maybe we should check his bank. Maybe we should check his bank account.
Yeah. Yes. There we go. Somebody needs to tell Bill O'Brien that we have all these stupid committees, and 90% of these idiots on the committee only look at the final score. They don't remember that you took an F and E, dummy. So I mean, you just crushed FSU. But word to you, these things matter in polls. Scores matter. You should have put 35 on the board and given us a chance to get the over. You stinky bastard.
Yeah. All right. So now I'm going to give you guys a chance to go where you've been wanting to go since we started this show. All right. So we've seen two games of DJU. There was a question asked of Mike in the post-game press conference about would there be any kind of competition between Brock and DJU in the open week, and he kind of gave an open-ended answer. I don't remember exactly what he said, but it certainly caused a lot of conversations. Kurt Weiler and Bob Ferrante on our site actually wrote a story about it. It's turned into a great board thread. Listen, I wasn't a fan of the bridge quarterback idea to begin with. I think that this team was never going to be as good as last year's. I don't think they really had a realistic shot at an ACC championship coming into this year. I think that, in my opinion, they should have gotten one of the two young quarterbacks ready. But now, listen, I'm not saying they should bench DJU, but I think they got to start playing Brock, at least in series, starting against Memphis. But that's my opinion. I've stated it on our website. I don't need to talk about it anymore. People can read about it. What do you guys think needs to happen at the quarterback position? And JP, I'll start with you.
Well, as I think we've said all the reasons why DJ can't play. He just can't play in college football at this level. The evidence is overwhelming. We don't need to see anything else. What is, like I tell my kids all the time, when you got to make a big decision, what's the upside? What's the downside? All right, you got to make a big decision. What is the downside to benching DJU? There's no downside. There's no downside whatsoever. He's not gonna. He's not going to take, even if he takes you to 7 or 8 wins, who cares? You know, it's after going 13-0, nobody cares. You know, is he going to beat Miami? No. Is he going to beat Florida? Probably not. You got to have a running quarterback. You got to have someone who can move. And I'll be honest with you, Pat. When I first heard FSU was going into the portal to get a quarterback, I was like, well, you better get a really good one, because I thought we had recruited a couple of really good quarterbacks, and these guys can play. Like, if it wasn't for the transfer portal and this trendy way of doing things, we would have just let these guys. I mean, Brock Glenn, Ohio State wanted him. Am I wrong in that?
Yeah, he was committed to Ohio State.
Luke's a 5-star. You know,
who was offered by Georgia.
I mean, what are we doing here? And Brock Glenn needs to play now. I don't even think. And again, if Mike Norvell wants to lose the fan base, I mean, first of all, put that effing DJ back in the booth for the next game. That was freaking awful. That's one way to lose the fan base. You've already done that, and I know that's not Mike's decision, or maybe it was. But and then drop DJU out there. I don't even think the fans will revolt if you put DJU out there. They already did at halftime. I mean, this is a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. And if Mike doesn't do it, I'm really concerned about his mental state right now.
Yeah, I thought they should have benched him at halftime. I maybe you give him one more series, and then we saw what happened with one more series. I would have benched him at halftime. I don't believe he should play another down at Florida State. I think Norvell's going to give him one series to see what he does against Memphis. It's just my belief. I don't see the purpose of it. I don't think he's the answer. And listen, you go back. First off, I know a lot of people were hard on Brock. He was put in a situation last year. He's the third string quarterback. Half the team quit in the Orange Bowl. The one touchdown or the pass he made to Portier, DJ's never making that throw. I know Brock can make it because I saw it. I was there.
Right.
He made a beautiful throw to Portier. He can make plays with his legs. I think he ran for a touchdown either in the Florida or the Louisville game. The kid has moxie. I think that he's part of that team. DJ, there's no ties to him to that university. He hasn't worked out. Like, Glenn's been there for a year and a half. Give him a shot. I don't believe it could be worse. Like I said, I don't believe he could be any worse. I liked Brock Glenn coming out of high school. Is he the next Charlie Ward? No. Maybe he's the next Christian Ponder, but I know he's better than DJ. I've seen it, you know.
The other thing I'm going to say is the people that are banging on him against his performance against Georgia are the same guys that are saying that game shouldn't have counted. So that's bullshit to begin with. All right. And all right. First of all, and secondly, he was playing with one hand tied behind his back because all his teammates quit on him.
Yeah.
Keon Coleman, Trey Benson, Jaheim Bell, Johnny Wilson. He did not have a skill guy that was of any significance in that ball game outside of Toafili. Outside of that, he didn't have one weapon to play with.
He deserves a shot.
And Morlock. So listen, and I do think he brings a little bit of juice with him. He practices with enthusiasm. He plays with enthusiasm. He's kind of got this. You go back to the Florida game where he got inserted and decided to call his own number and took off with the ball. He's got a little juice to him. All right, so we've gotten through all that. Now listen, each week we reset our expectations for this football team. We're not. These next 3 games are going to make or break this team's season. You've got Memphis, who is, as far as preseason publications were concerned, the best team Florida State will have faced in its first 3 games. Now, they struggled to some extent with North Alabama. They only ran for like 60 yards against North Alabama in their opener. They play Troy on Saturday. I think I'll be watching that game. It's on ESPNU. I want to see what they look like against a better opponent. But you've got Memphis, Cal, SMU. And then it gets really hard after that. Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, and Notre Dame. All based off 1 week of football, look really good either on one side of the ball or both. So you get out of, let's say you get out of the next 3 weeks either 2-3 or 3-2. What is the win total? The only 2 games I can see right now that they would be favored in. We'll see about Cal and SMU. But the only for legit sure, I think they'll be favored against Duke and Charleston Southern, no matter what this team looks like when they get to those games, because those aren't two very good football teams. But what is a realistic expectation win total for Florida State after 0-2 start? What would you guys think? Come on, Fish. No, I don't think it's.
Are you trying to kill every relationship I have at Florida State? Like, dude,
all right, we'll just ask JP. We'll just ask JP. We'll keep you. Listen, it's like I told Shane yesterday.
I'll give you the Charleston Southern. I'll give you the Charleston Southern, but I've seen this team lose to Jacksonville State. Seriously, man. I mean, based on the first 2 weeks, there's nothing. There's not. I can't listen. I'm a guy. I'm a gotta see it guy. For the most part, I gotta see it. I want to see it, and I gotta see something on tape. And there's nothing that I've seen on tape, and I'm not trying to be mean to anybody, but I think any objective observer of what you've seen on tape, there's nothing redeeming of this team. There's nothing to hold your hat. There's just nothing. There's nothing to grasp onto. Memphis is a better football team. I don't know much about Memphis, but just based on what I've seen, I don't see how.
I want to see them against Troy. Listen, because I was worried about SMU coming out. Well, I still am, but I watched them against Nevada.
Talking about until I see Florida State.
Oh yeah.
The coach has got to pull his head out. He's got to play. Does he have the guts to put other players in Brock Glenn? Listen, I know Mike's probably thinking, well, I brought DJU all the way here. We gave him this money. We got to give him another chance. No, you don't. No, you don't. No, we've seen enough. It's not just these 2 games. It's his entire career. Yeah. It's his entire career. I mean, there's nothing more to evaluate. If you can't move on from this, then you don't have the stomach to be a major college coach. You make too much money to worry about what some people are going to say. And if Brock Glenn falls flat on his face, I'm going to sit here and say that was still the right choice. Let's see what Luke can do. And if Luke can't do it, let's go to the next guy who played, what was his name? Trevor. The fourth quarterback now.
Trevor Jackson.
Trevor Jackson. I'll go to him too. That boy can run. Let's go.
I mean, I don't care. He's got a really strong arm.
He's got a strong arm too. He can run. He can throw. He can spin it. He can do it all. I saw it in the spring game. Hell of a lot more impressive than DJU. I just, if you can't make that decision, then they're probably going to win one more game.
JP, we've seen this story before. Xavier Lee, and they put Ponder in there. Nobody knew what Ponder could do. I remember, I saw Ponder at FSU's camp. I'm like, this kid's never going to play it. I've never been more wrong about a player than Ponder, and the kid proved everybody wrong. So you don't know what these other guys can do till you play them. I know. Listen, DJ's not the answer. Right. I mean, honestly, my wife watched the game the other day, and she's like, "Man, that kid's really bad."
Yeah. I don't think the players believe in him either.
No, I don't.
The players look at him as an outsider. They don't believe in him, and I think that's part of the problem too.
Listen, I think they're going to win more than I think it's going to be somewhere between 5 and 7 games. That's what I think. But it's not. Listen, I had them.
They keep DJU in there.
I had them to pick 9-3. Listen, I think it's going to depend on. We don't know what Cal is. We really don't know what SMU is, and we certainly got to see. If Memphis really struggled running the ball against UNA, maybe they aren't as good as projected, although they did bring in a really good transfer running back. So we'll see how that plays out.
Mike can't lose to Memphis, dude. Yeah. Like, honestly, I feel confident enough to say that I think they'll win that game. All right.
I got to see it. All
right. Well, if DJ plays, then I'll change my prediction. But
we won't know that until kickoff.
I don't think DJ's going to play. I really think that they're going to go with Brock.
I think they're going to go with DJ and put Brock in, but we'll find out. All right, so JP, I know you got to run. We appreciate you joining us as always.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for letting me back. Always fun.
We will see you next. We'll see you next Tuesday. We'll see you next Tuesday. And listen. We've had Nick Carlisle sitting back in the weight room like 30 minutes.
JV's going to be the guy from Airplane that's like, this was a wrong week to get off of glue. If we lose it, somebody's going to be jumping out the window. Man.
You think this is coffee?
Yeah, exactly.
Coffee? That's Irish coffee.
He'll be jumping out the window. You're going to be like,
straight Jack Daniels.
That's Irish
drinking it for 5 days.
he jumped out of the window without a parachute on.
Hey, now I'll leave you with this, JP and Fish. And Fish is going to come back for our second segment. As Terry Bowden used to tell us at the end of every practice, nothing is ever as good as it seems, and nothing is ever as bad as it seems. But boy, it seems bad right now. But we'll see what happens. Hey, every week's a football season, right? Well, there'll be another chapter written next week, and we'll see what we get when we read it. But hey, JP, have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, we'll be right back with Fish and Nick Carlisle after this message from our sponsors.
The Backshore. That stretch of fluffy sand just beyond the reach of the salty waves. The place reserved for volleyball nets, cookouts, and the air filled with fun and laughter. Celebrate the Backshore with Backshore Apparel. Grab an amazingly soft and comfy Backshore Apparel beach hoodie to keep you protected from the sun's harmful rays. Or the Backshore revamped trucker hat, a modern twist on a classic favorite. Crafted from moisture-wicking fabrics, ensuring they're lightweight and breathable. Not to mention durable with their unique floating feature. Shop now at BackshoreApparel.com. And right now, FSU fans get 10% off your order with code FSU10. Hey Seminole fans, Alumni Hall is your ultimate FSU shopping experience and has moved to a new location off Timberlane Road in Tallahassee. Shop FSU gear from Nike, Champion, New Era, Yeti, and more. Alumni Hall has Seminole gear for the entire family, plus accessories and gifts. Spend $150 and you'll earn $10 off your next purchase with their Hall Pass rewards. Stop by their new location on Timberlane Road near REI or shop anytime online at alumnihall.com. Alumni Hall, where Seminole fans shop. Finding an experienced lawyer you can trust is crucial. With over 50 years of combined litigation experience, the attorneys at Mowry Law Firm are dedicated to providing our clients with exceptional legal services, focusing on car and trucking accidents, premises liability, and wrongful death. Call 904-824-7799, MowryLaw.com.
We are back with a fire Thursday edition of Seminole Sidelines. JP Peterson, direct from Tampa, and Fish was because we talked a little bit of takeaways on this football team. We're going to move into a more thinking segment now. And although it's talking about an 0-2 football team, move on to recruiting. We'll welcome in Carlisle, who is probably shocked by what he just witnessed in the waiting room. Listen, Nick, I love having passion with football. I hope you enjoyed it in the waiting room, and we hope that listening and watching enjoyed it too. You know, listen, we got excited when they won last year, and we're getting excited when they're losing this year. We're fired up about Florida State football. Listen, every week is a story, and we will see what next week has to hold. But Nick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I really appreciated Fish's airplane reference. You might not even think I'm old enough to have seen that movie, but it's definitely I picked the wrong day to stop smoking black tar heroin type vibe around town right now. It really is. It really is. But yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I think it's good to see, sometimes talking heads, we like to ride the middle a little bit and not be one direction or the other. It's good to see some passion in talking about this team because, it's something that matters. And when stuff's not going right, you kind of want to see somebody bang their hand on the table, not much like Brian Kelly did, and say this needs to be fixed. Yeah,
listen, we're all passionate about ball, and I think it's last year we gave all the team the praise it deserves, and some criticisms, and it's just like somebody asked me why I would put myself through the second read of Boston College, and in this football you can't bad days, just like and just enjoy the good ones. And listen, there's a lot of truth in what we're talking about. It may not be popular, it may not be what hardcore fans want to, but it's what we're saying is at least somewhat merit based. We all have football backgrounds, and most of us know what we're looking at that cover the team. I feel our staff, but listen, it's fun. It's fun to talk about. I love having these where people get fired up, and I don't have enough of them, and it kind of works. We're all everybody's frustrated. This is kind of radio therapy. I'm the football version of the Fraser show. Hey, listening, we're talking. Hey, All right, so let's talk some recruiting, boys. We got some good, and you'll take wins wherever you can get them. They snagged a commitment, and you say his name, Nick, because I can't.
I'm pretty sure it's Isaiah.
Yeah,
So, 6 linebacker Isaiah was committed to Florida State last night. They rivals 250. Originally committed to Syracuse, holds offers from Florida State, Georgia, Illinois, Iowa State, among others. Nick, did you get a chance to talk to him, and what his reaction been to offer and commitment?
I hadn't had a chance to talk to him after the game, but I texted with him a little bit. I tried to get a story with him. We were making progress on the story, and then it pops up last night that he's committed to Florida State. And I'm like, well, that kind of changes things a little bit. But no, obviously, as you already said, a kid that was committed to Louisville, committed to Syracuse, backed off that pledge at the beginning of August, kind of citing that he wanted to play his college ball in Florida. Named a top 3, Miami, Florida State, Florida. Saw Florida last week, I believe, or maybe he saw them earlier in the week. First time visiting Florida State on Monday. And, it was the first time that he had really been face-to-face talking with the coaches, and I think that really made a difference for him. I heard he was really, really close to committing to Florida, visited Florida State, and that changed things, and now he's a Seminole. He's going to be visiting Miami, I believe, if not in the next week, in the next 2 weeks. So obviously he's a 2026 kid. Very long way to go, but as you say, you take wins where you can get them, no matter how big, how small.
All right, Fish. I know you've seen the kid. I've watched the kid on tape today. What are your thoughts on him as a prospect? And as Nick alluded to, there's obviously a long way to go, and we're going to talk about what's going on in the field affecting recruiting later. But what are your thoughts on it? What are your thoughts on this kid?
I mean, in FSU circles, he's a unicorn. He's a linebacker. So, they got one.
Yeah.
You
just can't get them from the current class, apparently. I mean, this 2026 class has, 6 commits, and the 2025 class is 9 or 10 or something along those lines. Anyway, go ahead, Fish.
Yeah, I've talked about this or spoken about it before, and Pat brought this up, and, he is one of these new modern-day linebackers that they don't really play linebacker in high school anymore, and I think that's what makes this position so hard to evaluate. He's either coming off the edge or he lines up in the slot. He doesn't really line up in a traditional linebacker spot. So he's someone you're going to probably have to see in person. I do like that he does have some speed. You'll see him initiate contact. He will go through guys, but you also have to look at the competition. He's not playing against the greatest players. It'll be curious. I think it's a good take now. I don't think you can take any bad takes right now. It's so early in the process in that class. And he's a guy you're going to have to bring to camp and see if he could, play in space, cover some running backs. If he can do those things and play in space, he's better than what they have. The whole thing right now is they got to upgrade that position and bring bodies in and guys that could play. He's someone that has the tools, but you'll see some things that do concern you on film because he doesn't play that natural linebacker spot.
Yeah, listen, you and I were texting before the show, and I jumped on this film after Nick sent the commitment story. And listen, he does run well. He is physical. He does have good change of direction. I think it's hard to make an evaluation on a kid at linebacker who takes 85% of his snaps in high school as a outside linebacker, stand-up rush in, and that's what you see. Now, he does get off blocks well. I would like to see him play more traditional linebacker, or what is now a traditional linebacker. You do see snaps of him lined up on the second level in the box, and I liked what I saw. You just don't see enough of it. But as you guys said, listen, it's a 2026 commit, some positive energy within the program on the recruiting trail, and you'll take it where you can get it right now. Now, I know that I know Nick has some updates on the 2020, a couple of the 2025 commits. I know you got some on Kevin Wynn, Tramel Jones, maybe a couple others, but let's start with Kevin. I know you spoke with him. What's the latest on Kevin? He was at the game on Monday night.
Yeah, he was one of a couple of commits that made the trip to get there on Monday night. CJ Wiley was another guy that made it back to campus on Monday. Look, sometimes no news is good news, and it's nothing new that we didn't already know. We know that Georgia is really heavily invested in trying to flip Kevin, especially since Christian Garrett decommitted and went to Georgia Tech. So Georgia is talking to Kevin pretty much every single day. Sort of along the lines of the story that Gorney did yesterday, Pat, where there doesn't seem to be a ton of panic yet in these commits, but the wheels are obviously we're not all dummies. The wheels are starting to turn here in terms of how the transition between okay, they need to get it back together, and okay, this is falling off the rails. It could sometimes be a very slim margin. So right now, he talked to Odell during his visit, and Odell said, "Hey, we've been in this situation before. We're going to come back from this." And Kevin's like, "I believe Odell, and have no reason not to believe Odell." But again, it's not like Georgia is not talking to him every day. They absolutely are. That certainly is a flip candidate moving forward. But there's no panic right there. So it's nothing that's going to push the needle from what we already knew. But it's good to see the consistency and Kevin, at least initially, holding down the foundation of his recruitment.
I sure hope they can hold him because he's an outstanding looking prospect. And,
yes, he is. And he's a great kid.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say his personality is unique. He kind of reminds me personality-wise. Now, maybe a little bit different, but as far as just the approachability of the kid, the sincerity of the kid, he kind of reminds me a little bit of the way Chris Otto was when we used to talk to him when he was being recruited by Florida State, and of course plays guard and tackle here for Florida State now. All right, so you got a bad update on Tramel Jones. We found out some bad news on Florida State's 2025 quarterback commit. Nick, what do you know? What can you tell us?
Yeah, so unfortunately, Tramel Jones is more than likely going to miss the remainder of his senior season at Mandarin with a broken ankle injury. He went down in the first quarter of their game against, I believe it was Atlantic Coast on Friday, and they carted him off. And I don't know if he had surgery or not, but you just feel gutted for Tramel. Obviously, he had such a great offseason in terms of all the camps that he went to, Elite 11, and just the development of him as a quarterback. You were really hoping for him personally to have a really good senior season to really see the development of him as a quarterback as he transitioned into the class in December. For people that are wondering, does this affect Florida State and his relationship? It does not. He's still committed to Florida State. Florida State's still committed to him. There's no reason to worry about that necessarily. But yeah, Tramel Jones is going to be missing some time with a broken ankle, which obviously really sucks.
Yeah, it does, and you hate it for any kids. It's in their senior year with an injury in high school. But the good news is for Tramel, he is one of the few kids coming out of high school that will continue his career in college. So he has not played his last football game, just his last football game in high school. But as someone who almost missed my senior year due to injury, I do know how that feels, and we wish him a speedy recovery. But he did say that one of his focuses will shift to helping Florida State recruit this 2025 class. So listen, silver lining to everything, but certainly we wish him a speedy recovery because, again, another kid that seems like a really good kid that Florida State has committed. A couple other kids, Max Redmond, Peyton Joseph, they both spoke with Gorney. Both seem really locked in. No words, no open-ended sentences, nothing to read into. Very matter of fact, Florida State's going to get this turned around. I'm fine. Malik Clark continues to hear from North Carolina and South Carolina. That was always going to be the case. I think if there's one guy that I would keep an eye on right now, Dalen McCutcheon, the wide receiver from Texas. He is going to visit Texas A&M, USC, and FSU this fall. And obviously, Fish, bring you in here now on the recruiting segment. What's going on the field? You see USC go and beat LSU on national television. McCutcheon picked Florida State over USC. Those were the final two in his recruitment. How concerned are you about this class and what's going on in the field, and just basically any other updates that you have on recruiting for the 2025 class?
The good thing is that most of these players aren't as emotional as fans, and they understand that football teams do win and lose, and a lot of them are part of losing teams in high school that don't go to the playoffs and don't win a whole lot of ball games. So most of these kids, I always believe, they think they're the difference between FSU winning and losing, and their egos are like, oh man, I'll just go there and make Florida State better. So I'm not one of these people that sit there and go, oh, every kid's going to decommit and then none of these kids are going to sign with FSU. Will they probably lose one or two? Yeah, but they probably would have lost one or two even if they had been 2-0 right now. Like, not every one of these guys.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah,
is committed was going to stick, and that's part of recruiting. I think you have to keep recruiting hard. I think Florida State. We've discussed this. I think Florida State has to expand the board this year. I put up a list of guys that they could probably go after that are good football players. There's still a lot of guys that are uncommitted too that they could expand the board. You hear certain names and you get tied into them, and then when they don't come your way, you're like, oh man, there's nobody else out there. But there are still a lot of good football players. They've got to get better football players. The group, the roster they have now, they're going to lose a lot of guys that came in from the portal that were 1-year rentals. The roster is going to probably expand to 105. So there's still a lot of room. Like I said, I've seen Kobe Howard play this year. I think he's a kid I would definitely get on. He's from Pensacola. He liked Florida State early on. He's committed to Penn State. I see no reason why they can't pull a kid like that. And they got to just I think they have to recruit more tackles and more D linemen. They just got to get better up front, and they need traditional tackles. Stop recruiting these 6'3" guys and say you're going to play them at tackle. It just isn't going to work.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this class goes. But whether anything happens, whether the season gets better, gets worse, whatever. I think it's going to be interesting. I agree. You and I have already talked about the fact that we thought there would be some potential flips, even if they had a great season. I do think that what happens on the field will impact that more negatively if it's a really bad season. But Nick, anybody else you've talked to? Anybody else you want you have updates on?
I think one worth noting is Usman Kroma. He was he was on the visitors list for Monday. He did not show up. I think it's very telling that he chose to go to see Auburn face whoever the hell that they played in their first week of the season instead of staying in and going to the more local game, which would have been Georgia Clemson in the Benz. I think there's a lot of momentum with Kroma to Auburn right now. I would be very surprised if he doesn't be an Auburn Tiger. Let me rephrase that. If the midseason commitment timeline that he had holds up, I feel like it would be Auburn. I'm surprised he hasn't been to Georgia yet. We'll see if he goes back to Georgia. And, Florida State kind of falling behind in this one, that kind of makes me a little bit nervous about how things go with Byron Lewis too, since Georgia is also coming back into the fray with Byron Lewis as well. So I know Fish really feels like he's going to end up in the Seminoles class. And he and I'm speaking of Lewis there, that Lewis will end up in the Seminoles class. But if Kroma goes to Auburn and Georgia is still looking to take a second running back in the class apart from Walker, do they come in late and swoop and take Lewis out of the fold? So Kroma not showing up on Monday, I didn't think he was going to show up, but him not showing up Monday after going to Auburn was a pretty big deal in terms of the 2025 guys that we were expecting on campus.
Yeah, well, Reverend Hughes got a pretty full collection plate right now.
Yeah, he does.
Listen, Lewis has been steadfast the whole time. Florida State's been its leader. And I know that doesn't always mean a whole lot, but he is going to a school that Pat Surtain coached at. There's other guys on the roster from American Heritage Plantation. I think it's just the kid. Florida State is focused on him. I think Kroma was more icing on the cake that they landed two guys than them picking either Lewis or Kroma. I don't think it was one or the other. Lewis, I always felt is going to be in the class. I just did. He's the one guy I feel comfortable saying because of all the ties and what he's become a priority. Really, at the end of the day, if Lewis was looking around, I think Miami would really be an option. But I do believe that Florida State, he's become the guy that they focused on early on, and that's who they really want. And Kroma was more of like an addition to having a really, really good class. But, I expect Lewis to choose Florida State.
Well, let's talk about a guy they started putting some focus on later in the recruiting process, and that's defensive back Ladarian Clarity, kid they waited till this spring to offer. Of course, they're not the only ones. There were several, I think Georgia, Alabama, and some of those schools offered in May or April. Listen, this was one that I thought Florida State would have sewn up. This kid used to dream of coming to Florida State. We've talked to him about that. over the course of his recruitment back when he was coming on unofficial visits. Where are you leaning on clarity right now, Fish? FSU, Ole Miss, UCF, Washington?
Yeah, I just think Florida State got into it too late. I'm a little concerned with that. Clarity is a kid I love. I think I don't want to put him in the same category as a kid, but he's got a little LaMarcus Joyner in him that he could kind of play all over the field. He's very physical. He's very fast. He's an athletic kid. He's long. He's not a real tall defensive back, but he makes up for his lack of height with more of length and his physicality. I think he's a guy that they should have been on early. I like those guys in Pensacola. I think that west part of Florida, west of Tallahassee, produces a lot of talent, and I've always felt FSU's kind of under-recruited there. I would like to see him in their class, but I think Ole Miss has done a very good job of recruiting him and some of the other guys. It seems like Florida State, they had other guys in mind, and now they're coming around to them. And I don't know if that always works with a lot of kids. I think if they had shown a little more interest early on, this thing would have been wrapped up. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, there's been some surprise guys that you think are leaning away. This one could go Florida State's way. It is a good thing that he did change his mind, but that may be to just take another visit or two. So it'll be interesting.
Yep. Yeah, and both Lewis and Clarity are right now set to announce their commitments on September 21st. So we are a little bit over 2 weeks away from that. So we'll know where the direction of both of those guys are trending by the 21st. And
Florida State's got plenty of money to give both of them. I mean, so there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money in the
money from the defensive line. I heard that $2 million according to the Athletic. Take some of that money away.
Yeah, I've heard anywhere from $12 million to $18 million in the old Battles In budget for Florida State and various sports, including football. All right, guys. So we don't have any football this weekend, college-wise, here in Tallahassee or FSU related. I didn't pull a lot of games, but let's talk a little bit about picks. Listen, there's not a lot of sexy matchups if you're one of those people that's only going to watch ranked opponents. But there are a couple of games that I am interested in. One, and just because Florida State plays them next, you got Memphis versus Troy. So I don't really care who wins that ball game. I just want to see what Memphis looks like. But probably the big headliner this weekend is a noon kickoff with Texas at Michigan. Texas looked like stone cold killers against Colorado State, and Michigan kind of sleptwalked its way through its game against Fresno State in its opener. Who you guys got in this game? I'm going Texas big.
Texas big. Wow.
Texas big.
I think Texas wins this game. I don't know if it's going to be a huge blowout. I think there may be a little Harbaugh hangover up there in Michigan. They didn't look all that convincing in their. I forget exactly who they played in week one. Fresno State, and they didn't look all that convincing. Hey, the cliche that apparently just didn't apply to Florida State is week 1 to week 2 is your biggest jump in improvement. So maybe there's a jump there and Michigan looks better. But I think Texas probably wins that one.
I mean, last year I was big on Washington and Michigan. I think Texas is this year's Michigan. They lost in the playoffs last year. They've been climbing. I think they're going to take a slogan from Florida State. They've reached the climb. I think they're one of the teams that's probably either going to play for the title or win it this year. I think Texas is going to handle Michigan pretty easily this weekend.
One of the other games I'm interested in watching is Georgia Tech at Syracuse. If they win that ball game, Georgia Tech starts the year 2-0 in ACC play, and really is going to be it'll be first in the ACC by a long shot. I don't think anybody else has played but one ACC. Florida State's played 2 ACC games. So
I mean, on that game, Pat, the one thing that concerns me more than anything, that Georgia Tech's only favored by 3. It's just, you would think that line would at least be 6 or 7. A lot of people. That's scary. That a team that's 2-0 that has played really well in their first 2 games, they're coming into Syracuse, which isn't a very good team, has a new coach, and they're only a 3-point favorite. I know it's on the road and Syracuse is tough, but you would think that game would be more closer to 7 points than it is, a pick 'em.
All right, then I think the game of the evening, anyway, at least from a national perspective, and fan interest. You got Tennessee versus NC State in Charlotte. Grayson McCall at the new quarterback at NC State. Dave Doran's done a great job. I know Florida State fans hate him, but he has done a really good job. And listen, his teams are chippy. I give him that. They come in here and they get chippy with Florida State. And I'm not a big fan of NC State fans. I don't mind Dave Doran so much. Then you got Tennessee, who's got the quarterback that I can't pronounce his name either. Nico is what I call him because I think that's his first name, and it's about a 25-word last name. But anyway, rave reviews last week in their opener in Neyland Stadium. Listen, I think this is a big game for the ACC conference as a whole, and I know Florida State fans really don't care about ACC conference, but they should while Florida State is in there. This is a big for the optics of the league. And listen, if you think Florida State's going to get back on track, you got to want to see Georgia Tech win because it makes Florida State's record, whatever it turns out to be, look better. And I think as a conference, you got to want to see North Carolina State beat an SEC team. But who you guys taking in this one? I'm a big Grayson McCall fan, and I'm less of a Josh Heupel fan. And so I'm going to go with the home state team, not the hometown team or home team. I'm going with NC State over Tennessee.
I don't really have a good feel either way on this game. Grayson was not very good last year. He had a good career early on at Coastal. Tennessee, I think, tends a lot on the road at NC State. That's a hard stadium to play in, so I could see it within the number. I don't like it either way, but if I had to pick a team, I think Tennessee's the better team, but it wouldn't surprise me to see NC State win.
Nick, who you got?
Yeah, I have to ride the coattails on that one. I don't really feel either way about either team in this one. I think NC State just has to play better than they did last week against Western Carolina. I like what's his name, Concepcion. Is that his name?
Yeah.
I like that kid a lot. I think he's really, really good. If Grayson McCall has a more consistent game through quarters 1 through 4, it could be a really, really close game. But I'd be interested to see Nico in a hostile environment because if for the first time and just see kind of just how he responds to that. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you're rattled, anything can happen on the road. So I feel like Tennessee probably, if you're taking the performance of last week and judging it to this week, I think Tennessee probably wins that game. But NC State can definitely make it close if they play a little bit better, consistent through quarters 1 through 4.
Well, listen, it's going to be fun to have a Saturday where I can load up multiple televisions in my house and spend a day watching a ton of football.
The mall cop look. You got monitors everywhere.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. It's going to be 12 o'clock to about 3 o'clock in the morning. Football. But it's going to be a fun weekend. I love college football. Appreciate you guys coming on. Now, we may have an altered schedule next week on Seminole Sidelines because of the open week. We are planning to go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We will probably modify that some. We'll definitely do a Thursday show for sure. I think we will do a Tuesday show, but we may combine some things because we'll probably do it on Monday, Nick, because I believe Mike and the coordinators speak on Monday. So we will probably do a Monday night show in advance of Mike's television show. So we'll probably be back at 6 on Monday, 3 on Tuesday, and 3 on Thursday next week. I think there's talk of maybe you, Bob, and Kurt jumping on tomorrow. I'll let you guys make that decision, but we'll certainly keep you updated on the site. If you're not an Osceola subscriber, please go to theosceola.com and check us out. Like I said, we have Kurt and Bob's article on the quarterback situation here at Florida State. You have my Takeaway Thursday article. We've got Nick's commitment story on Isaiah Williams. I think he's also got a 2026 defensive tackle story, Trayshawn Ruffin, if I'm not mistaken, Nick.
Yep.
And then,
we didn't talk too much about him, but so if you want to go and read that story from earlier last week, that's a kid that I'm really excited about. He really likes Florida State too, and they offered, and they're getting on him at the right time. He's got a Texas offer, a Wisconsin offer, and a Georgia offer in like the last week. So they got in early, and he likes Florida State. So
there's plenty of recruiting information there on the Osceola.com or FloridaState.Rivals.com. And if you don't subscribe to the Osceola YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button as you're getting ready to log off and hit the notification button so that you can get notified of when we're going to do these shows live or taped. But Nick, Fish, man, enjoy it as always. Fun to talk football, and we'll be back next week to chop it up again and talk a little Florida State and talk a little bit of college football. And we hope that everyone that watches and listens has a great college football weekend and finishing off your week on a positive note. And we'll talk to you next week.
Take it easy.